Hi, welcome to Sunlight on Suffield. I'm Neil Hornish. Today we're going to discuss an issue that keeps rearing up in Suffield, and that's the subject of racism in the Suffield public school system. We're going to discuss the issues and possibly what can be done to address that. And to help us with that discussion tonight, we're joined by our guest, Sonia Hill Przybylek, who grew up in Suffield. We'll be speaking about her personal experience and observations going through the Suffield public school system. She currently works in the Springfield school system, so we can talk about similarities there. And she was also recently became a deacon. So Deacon Hill Przybylek, thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
Could you just give us a little bit of information on your background and growing up in Suffield?
So my parents moved to Suffield, I believe, in 1990. I was about 5 years old at that time, about 39 now. And so my whole life that I can remember is Suffield. I went through kindergarten in Suffield, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And it was quite the experience. If I had to sum it up, there were, and I believe my first, if I'm going to jump right into things, my first experience probably that I can recall would have been back in elementary school. I had an unpleasant experience with another peer, and it's kind of funny how you would think you wouldn't remember interactions like that from the first grade, but you do. And a lot of my time when I reflect on Suffield has to do with different moments through elementary, middle school, and high school in which racism came up, and I had to fight against it, and I had to learn very quickly how to even endure it, which is something that you shouldn't have to endure. But I would have to say, in my house, with my brothers and sisters, that's how we survived. We had to learn how to process it, how to endure it, and how to wake up and know that there was still something worth going for, even in a school system that you didn't always feel safe or heard or seen in.
And that's in addition to just trying to learn what you're supposed to be learning in school. That must have added a lot of, made that process more difficult if you're dealing with this other issue at the same time. Exactly.
It really did.
And unfortunately, it's been something that we in town have been hearing that has been reoccurring even recently. Over the past few years, there have been some high-profile incidents. And I'd just like to read something. This is a quote back in May of 2022 from Archbishop Dexter Burke, who's the second vice president of the Greater Hartford NAACP. And what he wrote was, it's a little long, recently, this is 2022, recently right here in Suffield, a racially insensitive Snapchat video posted by a student of Suffield High School was shared hundreds of times on social media. And the unwillingness of school and law enforcement officials to punish the perpetrators of this hateful act in a manner that would deter any future behaviors by other students was not lost on the society. Parents and students alike have frequently complained about the practice of blatant systemic racism that exists in the Suffield School District. Complaints have been expressed about teachers allowing students to use the N-word without consequences, and about teachers who themselves use the word, and of other acts of microaggression. One student reported being threatened with lynching. According to the student, the district has made the school a safe place for racism to occur. Parents say they are sick and tired of these incidents, which open fresh wounds caused by the long history of racism experienced too often in our society, and believe it is time that drastic measures be taken to deter perpetrators and stop the spread of such hateful activities and behaviors, which, as we have seen, lead to the loss of lives. The Greater Hartford NAACP refuses to stand by and watch the disease of hatred, bigotry, and racism prevail in any of our towns, especially within our schools. Does Archbishop Burke's statement, are they reflective of some of the experiences you've had in the school system?
To be very honest, yes. Like I stated just a minute ago, I remember instances going back to elementary school. I remember instances happening in middle school and in high school. And to be very honest, after graduating from Suffield High School, coming back as an adult, it opens up old wounds for me when I hear that things are continuing. Especially when, in my heart, I don't believe it has to be that way. There were a lot of bad things that I went through growing up in Suffield, but there also were things that were put in place when I was in high school that I don't believe exist anymore in the Suffield school system. And I truly believe that if those programs and systems still existed, I'm not going to say that racism would never show up again. As long as there's human beings, I believe that, people have to be taught and taught, and some folks have to unlearn, and, each generation has to be taught these lessons, and not to make you angry, but so that we're better. Each generation is supposed to get better. And the reason why I find his words true is because it seems like they're not getting better. It's a cycle that doesn't have to exist. And it seems that in a lot of ways, people have reverted back in Suffield to thinking that if you ignore it or treat it like it's nothing, that somehow it'll go away, and it doesn't. And everyone doesn't endure that the same way. That has a real effect on someone's life. Everyone doesn't survive racism the way others do. And you shouldn't have to. There shouldn't have to be a survival. In Suffield, that's what we're creating. If you come in from a different background, sexual orientation, a religious group, that now you're going to have to deal with it, and that's not good enough. This town is better than that. I truly believe that. That's why I'm here. If I didn't think it was better than that, there wouldn't be a point to even having a conversation. But I hope I'm not going off track on you.
No,
but
no.
I believe that there are good people in Suffield too. And it's time for the silence that's been put over them, this shroud, they're causing problems, that needs to stop. And the work needs to be allowed to be done. There are people that want to do the work, and the stop sign in front of them needs to be removed, effective immediately.
I would like to get to some of the programs that you started in the school, but before we do that, a couple of questions. With what you experienced when you were in the school system, was that more hidden from the faculty, or was the faculty aware of it? Did the faculty try to intervene in any way, or was it just ignored?
It was known. Some of it was known to the faculty, especially, I believe, more when I was in high school. That was known to the faculty. As a matter of fact, there was an incident my senior year in which I ended up on the news talking about racism in Suffield because of a prank from a class project, I believe. If my memory was so long ago, I don't want to misstate the situation or distract from what we're talking about. But yeah, it was on the news. So yes, the whole faculty knew about it. I even had to speak to the principal at the time about the situation, and so no, there wasn't a secret at all.
And do you feel, after you talk to the principal, do you feel the administration handled it without going into details or necessarily, but do you think they handled it adequately?
In the end, yes. But I believe that's because I had a lot of support. I had my parents. It did hit the media, so it wasn't something that could have been swept under the rug. It was out there. And to be honest, I didn't call the media. I remember I was at track practice, and I was told, the news wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
And so I left from track practice to go and be interviewed about the incident that occurred. And I remember stating that the incidents that happened in Suffield, a lot of times people want to say that's an isolated incident. And I remember stating at 17, 18 years old that no, this is not an isolated incident. And although it was hurtful, there's no positive to it, but because someone in the community, I don't know who it was, called the media, for once light was put on it. It couldn't be put away in a little corner and no one talks about it. So I think because of that pressure, the administration did act on it. There's one person who I don't want to mention names, but I have to say there was one person on the administrative staff who I truly do believe had my back.
Well, that's good. That's fortunate that some people are working. Yeah, and again, this happened earlier. I'd like to read another statement. This is again from 2022, a statement from the Suffield Board of Education after the incident. There were a couple of incidents at the time. One was, as we've mentioned, a student who was threatened with lynching. There was also another where there was a list of people who frankly should be killed that made it around, and that created a lot of attention. And around that time, the Suffield Board of Ed made a statement that the Suffield Board of Education believes that all students must be provided a safe and welcoming environment in our schools. We do not and will not stand for racism or discrimination against any group, and our board goals and policies support this fundamental belief. And the superintendent at the time also sent a statement that said the Suffield Public Schools will continue to focus our efforts on student programming, professional learning for our faculty and staff, as well as thoroughly reviewing our existing policies and practices to ensure our schools are safe and welcoming environments for all students. We look forward to partnering with our parents and community members as we look to the future. So I guess the question is, this is from 2022, is this just talk, or has there been action done? I know you weren't in the school system by this time, but this seems to back up that this has been a continuing problem since your time and up till like recently. I know as recently as last May, there was a parent who went before the Board of Education and commented that her child was a victim of racial attacks. Unfortunately, the minutes don't reflect how the board responded to that. We do have a new superintendent. Hopefully, things will be addressed, and it won't have to come to someone getting media and a lot of public attention for it to be addressed. Hopefully, anybody who brings forward a complaint would
Be taken seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you state, what was your question again? I'm sorry, 'cause that
my question is,
that was really heavy.
The Board of Education and the superintendent put forth this claim saying, everybody should be safe and welcoming. We're fighting racism and discrimination. But the question is this just talk, or are there actually actions being put in place?
That would be my question. If you make a statement like that, but you can't answer what actions, what policies, what programs, what are you doing to change the norm? Because that to me, it's beyond, like I said, it's not an isolated incident. You just read, I talked about some of the stuff I experienced as a teenager in Suffield. You talked about the incident in 2022, and then you said last May of 2024, another incident. That's not isolated. And the whole the list of students that's on a whole that's another level. And so to me, that starts to feel like that's the norm in Suffield. Like, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that behavior is becoming normalized. If a student feels safe or they're not afraid to put out something like that, then my attention is more on the school than it is on the student. I'm in education. A kid is going to do whatever they feel they can get away with doing. They are. I don't care from the youngest to the oldest. If they feel like a certain act in the school community is not going to be taken seriously, they're going to be more apt to do that. And so for me, the incidents that are continuing to happen in the school show you whether those are just words or actions. Because if those words had some actions behind them, perhaps someone could point those out. Like, what is the Suffield school system putting in place to change the norm and the culture of their school? You know, you can't help what a student is taught outside of school, what they're exposed to outside of school, but you can help and you can influence the norm and the culture of your building, of your school community. That is the beauty and the power of a school. You're educating and molding students to join the rest of the world so that they know that they matter, all of them, and that they have something to contribute to this world beyond, has nothing to do with hurting and tearing someone down. And for me, even the kid that does that doesn't realize their own value. If you knew who you were and what you were created to be, you would never act like that. So it's horrible all around for the kid that had to endure that, because if there was no action, I don't know what happened as a result of that, but if there was no action, then that's just another kid that has another scar that every time they turn around and look back when they're my age, they get to see that it's still happening and no one's doing anything about it. And for the other kid that actually did that, you're going to miss out on so much. They're going to miss out on life. Like, there's so many beautiful things out there, beautiful people to meet and experience. And when you're taught that way, you're kept from it. It hurts everybody. It's poison to a community. So that's how I feel about that.
That's very well put. Okay, so let's transition to how do we address this? And I think what you just said was very poignant about we definitely have to protect the student who's being attacked, but we also have to consider the person who's doing the attacking and what's hurting in their life that can help. So you mentioned that while you were in the Suffield High School, you started some programs. Could you talk about those a little bit?
So I believe it was I started talking about it my freshman year, and then it really started going, if I'm correct, I'll go back in my memory, my sophomore year in high school. It was the first Black History Month program that I put together. There was a group of myself and maybe 4 other students that got together and got a lot of support, one from my parents, and then another parent in the community that really wanted to help and had some connections. And so I believe we had the Artists Collective come up to the school. They did African drumming. They did a whole performance, and it was beautiful. The only problem was that the whole school didn't get a chance to see it. It was kind of like if your teacher had time or wanted to come down, they did it in the gymnasium, then they could come and participate. And I really wanted to push for a full school, like the whole school, to stop and celebrate Black History Month. I had posters all over the school. I had this one that we put together, I believe it was over the library, and it said something like Black History Month, not just Black history, but American history. Like, that was the real point of it, is that this is the history of this country. This is American history. It's not a little secret, off to the side. No, it's proud history that we need to know, that my ancestors, American citizens in this country, have contributed since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of this country. And I didn't really hear much of that growing up throughout middle school. And by the time I got to high school, I wanted to do something about it. And then after that, the next year, I took it a step further and started the multicultural committee. And I remember there was a teacher, I will not mention any names, but there was a teacher that asked me, couldn't we just do it all during February? And obviously my answer to that was no. And I wanted to take a month for each culture really that was represented in our school and celebrate it. So I kept Black history and kept it alive. And the Artist Collective came back again. We also had, I think the president of the Urban League came to our school to speak. We had, I can't remember, she was a treasurer. I have to look it up, but she came to speak. And then my senior year, we had a poet come, and she passed, I believe, a few years ago. But that senior year was the year that I finally got the full assembly, and it's a coincidence. It's the same year that media situation happened, in which that was the first time the entire school came down, and it was the best assembly ever, period, that we had. Anyways, but going back to the other project I started, we dedicated, I believe March, I dedicated to Irish history. So posted everything on the schools. I had parents of classmates that donated things for me to put out on display, Irish prayers, things that I had never even seen before. We celebrated, I think I chose April. It kind of was February on, the party started for me. And I believe we did Asian culture as well. I had, again, classmates, parents give me real things from their homes to put on display. My thought behind it, again, was, I don't know if you've ever heard the thing when someone looks at you and they go, when I see you, I don't see color. For me, I want you to see. I love my skin complexion. I love everything about my kinky hair. I love my broad nose. I love my lips. I love everything about me. And to me, it's not a compliment for someone to say, I don't see you. I don't see that, so it doesn't bother me. No, I want you to see me, and I want you to accept me. That's, there was one generation that thought that way, and I think there was some good intentions behind it, but in the spirit of each generation becoming better and smarter and building off of the next, I want you to see me, and I want to see you. If that's your background, and you're Irish, and I want to learn your history. I want to hear the music. I want to learn. And to me, that's where I wanted to take Suffield High School to. That was the goal. I wanted everyone to be comfortable with celebrating each other.
And what type of reaction did you get from your fellow students?
To be really honest, it was really positive. Really positive. Especially, I have to say, the Black History Month program was one of the, I remember having classmates coming up to me and asking me what was going to be happening for Black History Month. And the only negative that came up with it was that they didn't know that I was pushing for a full school assembly, and that I was being told that couldn't happen. And I remember there was an individual, a teacher, that told me that something like Columbine might happen if I were to push that. So it was there was more fear among the adults for what would happen than my actual classmates, who actually did a standing ovation for that poet when she came to the school in 2004 and spoke. And I did not expect that. But when I tell you, the entire school stood to their feet and clapped, it was like one of the most beautiful moments I ever witnessed as a student in Suffield. It showed me what can happen when you are persistent and you keep fighting. And it was not easy. And so those are the programs that I was putting in place when I was in high school.
Oh, it's great you were able to start those. As far as I know, I don't think those programs are still going on at Suffield High School. I don't know how far they continued after you had left the high school, but I hope we can get those back in there if they're not going on now, because it sounds like it was an excellent program for the students too. And with your point about I don't see color, that doesn't embrace diversity. We can't just say you and I are exactly the same. No, we're not.
I
No
don't
one's
see
the
you. I
same.
love you though. Like no,
I don't know.
see me and love me. That's real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And have you been able to? We only have a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to get into a whole discussion about how you've been able to take your experience, and now that you're in the school system, how you've been able to implement things that you would have liked to have seen when you were a student in the Springfield school system. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that for this show, so
till next time.
I hope you will come back.
I definitely would.
We'd like to get more people. Maybe we can get a panel of people. So just quickly, I mentioned at the beginning, you are a newly confirmed deacon. Where is that? And
At Third Baptist Church. It just was ordained last Sunday. I believe that was March 12th, March 16th. Anyways, It was last Sunday. I am the first female deacon at Third Baptist Church in Suffield. It's a historically African-American church, and it meant the world to me. I'm still learning. I was told by my pastor that deacons never stop their training. You never stop learning and evolving. But one way that for me it connects to this conversation, which I'll never forget, is at the sermon that was preached at my ordination. It was made very clear that I did not become a deacon so that I could lord over the congregation. I became a deacon so I could serve the congregation. And I'd say I carry that with me in education. You don't become a principal. You don't become a vice principal. You don't become a teacher to lord over your students. You do it to serve them. And I truly feel that in Suffield, our students are in much need of service, given from the top down.
Yeah.
And when they get that service, that's when you'll start seeing the changes happening in the school, in the culture, and in the norms. And that's when the words that are written down there will be true.
That's a perfect way to wrap this up. Deacon Sonia Hill Przybylek, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. I hope you will come back again.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for watching. You can find Sunlight on Suffield on YouTube, Sunlight on Suffield CT. We're on Facebook, and we will continue this conversation in the future. Until then, take care. Thank you very much.